My name is Zoltan Szatucsek, and I have the honor to chair this session, which is titled New Approaches to Information Governance. It's a brilliant title because it's reusable. There are always new approaches in information governance for the very simple reason because technology is rapidly changing. And this changing technology has a really big impact on how can we manage our content. In the afternoon session, we can see more presentation about the content and how the content management is related to the technology. We have really diverse presentations, 8 speakers with different backgrounds. And from different sectors, representing the major partners, major stakeholders of the DLM Forum. We have speakers from the archives, we have speakers from universities, we have speakers from the private sector. And because our time is really limited, each speaker has only 20 minutes to speak and answer the questions, we have to start our first speaker. I would like to introduce you Janine Gier from the Netherlands, from the Dutch National Archives, and the title of her presentation is IT Governance of Dutch Municipalities Regarding Digital Information Management.
Thank you for introducing me. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed your lunch. Well, my name is Janine Gier, and today I'll be talking to you about IT governance. I'm a strategic advisor at the Dutch National Archives, and I've got a background in public information management. And I'll be talking about IT governance based on a research I did with 2 Dutch municipalities, where I interviewed several civil servants, asking them about their perspectives on the characteristics of IT governance. So what I would like to share with you today is how I think IT governance within a record-creating organization influences the quality of information and how that influences the archival institution, such as the Dutch National Archives. But before we will be getting into this, I would like to share with you a definition of what IT governance actually is. This is a definition from a business IT alignment perspective. I'll give you a second to read it, and then I'll talk. So in my opinion, 2 aspects here are important. First one is that IT governance is about decision-making power. It's about accountability, it's about authority, and it's about shared responsibility, about risk, about sharing resources. And a second aspect of this definition you can see in the triangle I drew. You can see that in this definition, 3 actors are placed central within the organization. That is the business, above. Then on the left side you can see IT, and on the right side you see services. And in my presentation, I'll be talking about internal services. So then let's look at the Dutch municipality. On this slide, I drew an oversimplified organization chart of an average Dutch municipality. And here you can see that the business, IT, and document management being part of internal services, are 3 separate units. But information management, on the other hand, concerns all 3 of these units. As I would say it, information flows through the organization freely and concerns all 3. And information does not stop. And its importance does not stop at the lines drawn between the different units on an organization chart, such as this one. So then, why is IT governance important for successful information management? Cooperation and open communication between the business, IT, and document management is essential for successful information management, as all 3 of these units have an interest in the success of it. And in order to being able to work, to cooperate successfully and have open communication, it is not only very important that these units understand their own roles and their own values, their own perspectives, but understand the perspectives and the values, the restraints, challenges, and opportunities of their coworkers in the other segments of the organization, to being able to find common ground. So how then are these three units involved? Well, first of all, it's mainly the business where information is created. For example, during policy making in Holland, for example, the business issues permits for demolition of a building. So that's where information is created and registered. Then it's document management that is usually responsible for the transfer of the information to an archival institution and needs to make sure that the files or the dossiers, as we would say, are complete and have got the right metadata. And then it's IT, with its strategic IT decision making, that needs to make sure that the hard and software of the IT architecture support this process. So to make this a little bit more concrete, in the digital era we find ourselves in right now, information within a governmental organization is stored in a wide variety of IT applications that are used by the business. So take email, for example. We at the Dutch National Archives are convinced of the fact that email may contain very, very valuable information for reconstruction of decision-making within a governmental organization. And email is also widely used by the business. So this poses a challenge to document management, which has to have an overview of where valuable information is stored, spread over these IT applications, and that it's actually brought together. And this is reasoned from how the organization works right now. This is not with an insight in the future. This is how it works right now. These document management teams usually gather that information into a document management system. And then it's IT that needs to make sure that these systems are interoperable and that information can actually be extracted from all these different applications. So then, why is IT governance challenging for municipalities or record creators in general? Well, first of all, overall, it turns out that decision-making authority is not spread equally over the business, IT, and document management. And from a business IT alignment perspective, it should be. And second of all, it turns out quite difficult for those three units to understand the roles and the values of their co-workers in the other units, making it very difficult to find the same language, find common ground, and understand the perspectives and agendas of their co-workers. So now let's zoom in on those three units in particular. What makes IT governance difficult for the business? Well, from the interviews I conducted, it turned out that the business is not overall always very motivated to work digitally, to change their processes. They often still cling to their analogous way of working, and they're not always motivated to use the IT systems that are provided. The document management system as a really big example, because in many organizations you see that the document management system is not used in a way it should be used. And a possible explanation for this is that the business also sometimes lacks a sense of responsibility for the success of information management, which is actually logical, because to them it's in the first place most important that they find the data they need for their own to do their work properly. They need the data to do their jobs, and what happens with those data afterwards is sometimes of less importance. So the secondary use is not top of their mind, which is a big component in successful information management. So then when we look at IT, what I found quite interesting during the interviews is that IT is very, very often not involved in strategic decision making, even when it concerns a project that possibly involves the purchase of an IT system. So sometimes the business needs something new to support their work, and then they start a project, and then after some time they find out that IT should have been involved, but it's already too late. So the perspective of IT is not taken into the project, or the requirements are not listened to early enough. And a possible explanation for this is the fact that for IT it turns out to be quite difficult often to explain its added value to the rest of the organization, especially to the business, making it difficult to find a language that is understood by both parties. And also making it quite difficult to find the right funding for their projects. So what's going on with document management? Document management often finds itself intermediating between the business and IT, and is having the grand task of finding a common language between the two, which is quite complex sometimes. And what I also found out is that they're usually the ones that do understand the importance of successful information management, but it turns out to be quite difficult for them to explain the added value of information management to the rest of the organization, and to explain how the involvement of the business and IT is very, very important. So let's wrap up what I just explained to you. What I just said comes down to three main things, I think. First one is that part of the business, it's not the overall business, of course, but part of the business lacks a sense of responsibility and motivation. And IT, secondly, is very often not involved and has difficulty explaining its added value. And then document management has got difficulty in explaining the added value of information management. So now I told you some about how IT governance works at a Dutch municipality. And as in the beginning I said, in my opinion, that influences the quality of information. But what is the quality of information? At the Dutch National Archives, we've developed 5 criteria for sustainably accessible information. That states that information should be findable, should be available, should be interpretable, authentic, and complete. And cooperation between the business, IT, and document management is essential for information to being able to meet those quality criteria. So let's take the availability and findability of information as an example. For information to meet those criteria, to being able to be presented to its stakeholders, think of citizens, entrepreneurs, researchers, historians, fellow civil servants, so co-workers, management, strategic decision makers. This information needs to be presented in a way that is actually logical to these stakeholders. So for the business, this poses a challenge to how to, for example, label their information and what names to give to that information. And also to use the right IT applications from which information can actually be extracted. And what you see in practice very often is that civil servants are still using their personal drives a lot, which makes it very difficult, even for the person sitting next to them, to extract that data. And IT, in its turn, needs to really think about how to make systems interoperable and how to extract that data from these applications, for example, an email application. And then document management needs to make sure that all the information is being put together and extracted from these different IT applications and is presented to the right stakeholders in a way that is logical to them. So we'll be now getting back to what my presentation started with. We talked about IT governance and quality of information. And then the last question is, how does that concern us as an archival institution? Well, as you, I think, might all know, part of the information created by a record-creating governmental organization will be transferred to an archival institution after, well, in the Netherlands, in practice, after usually 20 years, in theory. So you can reason that if the quality of information created by a record creator is poor, so will the quality of information stored at an archival institution be poor as well. So the archival institution has an incentive for that information to meet those quality criteria. And what happens very often in practice is that when information is ready for transfer that doesn't meet those quality criteria, the archival institution, in cooperation with a record creator, is trying to apply those 5 quality criteria on the information long after that information has been created, which is quite difficult, it's challenging, but it's also quite inefficient. So how much more efficient would it be if an archival institution, together with a record-creating organization, thinks about how to, for example, implement by design solutions so that information that is created meets those quality criteria from the moment it's created. And in order to being able to do that, it's quite important, in my opinion, based on this research, that the archival institution understands how IT governance works at a record-creating organization. So it's important for an archival institution to understand how IT, business, and document management work together and how that affects the quality of information. So that is what I wanted to share with you today. I think I made it within... I've got 6 minutes for questions.
So, who will be the brave to raise the first question to Jeanne? Okay, there is a...
Shall I just shout? I think it's great insights. I think I completely agree with you about that quality chain that you're describing. Do you think the archive should also intervene earlier, as John, I think, perhaps suggested this morning, in grabbing a copy of the material earlier so that it doesn't have to wait 20 years for the retrofitting of quality into the stuff? It can, even if the quality is not there, it has at least got a copy of the stuff.
Yeah.
Would that help, do you think?
Well, for one thing, I think it would help anyway if a transfer is as early as possible. So the earlier transfer, the earlier you would probably talk about those quality criteria. But in my opinion, it would be ideal to do that before information is created. So I think by design, implementation is most important. And then if you do not have that, early transfer would be ideal. Does that answer your question?
It does. I've worked in IT, around IT in government departments. Yeah. And I think your idealism is admirable.
Thank you. I'm still young.
I'm not entirely sure that and even with your idealism, we will succeed in really fixing the governance problem in the department. So we may need a more pragmatic approach.
Yeah, good one. Thank you.
Next question, please. There are more questions. Ladies first.
Thank you. I would like to introduce the idea of the records continuum in this governance, in which you embed the quality at the beginning of the process. And according to you, how is this view of, instead of capturing a copy of the record as early as possible, let the records managers to implement retention and identify as soon as possible the final record to be preserved? How are your views on that one?
I don't think I was referring to the process as keeping a copy, but I think the way this works, the organizations work now in general is opposite. Is not based on the records continuum yet. So I think what I've just described today is thinking of this linear idea of information being transferred.
Maybe managing all the stages of the life cycle and using the records management to identify the documents to be archived.
Yeah, and then implement that into IT systems and make sure that the business knows how to use it. So it basically has to come together. It all has to come together in an early stage at the design phase. Yes. That's most important, I think.
I agree. Thank you.
Okay.
I think another objective is also adorable. That is to capture metadata at its birth, and it's interesting that actually most records management standards say exactly this. So, to start with, do you have an inventory of applications that are actually record generating? What your interest there? And in terms of IT governance, I would say you should be able, via the governance mechanisms, to be involved when a new one goes online and classify that into some whatever business process categorization.
I'm not sure if I understood. Did you ask 2 questions or one?
Yeah,
and one?
or
Yeah.
3. Do you have an inventory of applications and the records they are producing?
That ideally should be the case, but in practice, organizations, they do have an overview of the IT architecture and the applications that are part of that. But I think there's a lack of knowledge what records these applications create and what to do with them in an appraisal way, or how long to keep them to manage them properly.
And how is your institution organized? Are these applications really run by the municipalities on their own, or do you run a central data center? Usually
they're run by themselves. Some applications are even built by civil servants themselves. So they sometimes hang together like a spaghetti. That's how it works.
I think you have to enter into politics. Governance is not sufficient.
Yeah, good one. Spread the word.
So thank you, Janine, for your presentation.